Ladies and gentlemen, everybody likes to win in chess. But there is a difference between winning and winning in chess. Sacrificing all of your pieces, viciously hunting the opponent's king out into the open before embarrassing him in front of all of the other troops. And that is exactly what I will be showing you in this video. Everybody likes sacrifices. Everybody likes brilliant moves. Everybody likes vicious attacks. One of the most popular chess players, who's not even with us anymore, is Mikhail Tal. And in this video, we will be channeling him as we go to St. Louis, United States, for the United States Chess Championship, an open event, closed event, I should say, but an open field of 12, 14 aspiring grandmasters. One of them is named Hans Niemann. And what he did in this game was scintillating. And as a bonus for clicking on this video, I'm going to show you another game of chess. Because why not? Because you like chess. Okay, Hans had the black pieces versus Sam Shankland, strong grandmaster, former 2700. The game opened with the pawn going to the d4 square, the queen's pawn game, and Hans Niemann responded knight f6 and e6. This is the most common way to play at the high level. You go for queen's gambit declined position with d4 and d5, but you also see if your opponent wants to play with the knight out, because then you're going to pin the knight to the king. And that's exactly what happens. White plays knight c3. White is trying to take a full center. Black plays bishop here, pinning the knight to the king. Knight can't move now, which means it can't defend the center. It's called the Nimzo-Indian defense. Do you have to know that? Probably not. But it's a very good opening. White plays e3. Next move, castles. Doing everything you're supposed to do. Now we're going to try to get these two pieces out into the game. Bishop d3. All normal so far. Hans plays in the center. You'll notice that this bishop is blocked. You are generally taught to bring out your bishops before you block them in. That bishop will have its day, I promise. White captures on d5. Black captures. There we go. I literally just told you, by the way, that bishop was about to get out. White plays a3, targeting the bishop. Now, should you take this knight? In general, you should avoid giving up a bishop for a knight if you cannot explain the benefit of the move that you have just played. In this case, there is not a huge benefit. A couple of moves ago, had you taken this, at least you could say, well, I am doubling White's pawns. White's going to end up with two stacked pawns, which is good for the person playing against them, generally. But in this case, it's a little bit harder, and so for that reason, Hans just brings the bishop back here. Says, I did my job. This bishop for White will struggle to get out a little bit, and that's kind of the reason you might want to make that trade. White puts the queen here. You will notice the queen and the bishop are lined up, pointed in this direction. That is known as a battery for your local chess trivia night. Now Hans plays a weird move. He plays knight to a6. That's a weird move. Don't try this at home. Don't try it in St. Louis. Don't try it wherever you are in the big wide world. The idea is to help the pawn advance and also to support it. And normally putting knights on the edge of the board is really bad and counterintuitive, and the knight can't even re-enter the game. Both of those squares are controlled by pawns. But you need to get to 2,738 before you are able to break the rules. And I don't mean 2,738 puzzles rating on chess.com. I mean classical. Knight f3, Sam Shankland doing all normal stuff. Black plays c5. That was the idea, to then take with a knight and then maybe grab the bishop. Sam castles. Hans plays pawn to c4, pushing the bishop back. The bishop does go back, and now knight c7. Now we actually see the usefulness of the knight on the c7 square. Hans defending the center pawn and supporting a potential advance on that side of the board. He would like to play the move pawn to b5. Sam Shankland here plays the move a4, which prevents black from playing the move pawn to b5. Right? That was the entire idea. Yes, but in chess, every time a pawn move is made, and I do mean pawn specifically, something changes. When a pawn moves in chess, it starts fighting for certain squares, but it stops fighting for others. Whereas if a knight moved, it still sees where it came from. You see? If the knight goes there, it still sees where it came from. A pawn forgets about where it came from. It only goes on for new frontiers. And that means that that square, which a moment ago the knight couldn't access, the knight can access immediately, and Hans Niemann goes back. which I find very humorous. I find this little maneuver very humorous. By the way, Sam Shankland very quickly responds pawn to b3. He wants to trade the pawn, activate the bishop. Hans jumps in with the knight, attacking the queen. The queen's got to move. It does. Hans takes, plays the move, bishop f5. With the idea to potentially land something on the c2 square. So far, so good. So far, nobody has done anything groundbreaking. Nobody has done anything insane. We're getting there. a5. Sam advancing on this side of the board. Hans centralizing the rook, targeting the knight, although it is protected. And Sam plays the move bishop d2. That is not the best move, but neither is this from Hans. a6, given a big fat question mark and a evaluation that goes from 0.2 to 1.1 or something. 6 times higher. All right, looking like some, data center stocks here in October 2025, not financial advice. Just, a little bit of a inflation there, maybe. Plus 0.2 to plus 1.2. Only if Sam plays knight here, giving up the knight, but targeting the knight over here. Instead, he plays the move g3, a very slow move. Very slow move, but he was a little bit concerned about the attack potentially launching on the side of the board. Hans plays now queen e7, defending that knight extra, stopping white from advancing with knight e5. Rook fc1 played by Sam Shankland. Both guys are preparing their incoming improvements. Rook c7. Sam now goes here, giving up a pawn. Not quite, because that knight would lose defense. But now we have rook c8 coming to this side of the board. Queen back to b2, and Hans smells something's a little bit wrong in this position and jumps in with his knight. Now, in this position, white can play rook takes c2, bishop takes c2, and takes. So he can play takes and takes. And then, but then there would be the bishop coming into b4. So it's going to get a little bit complicated here. Sam plays knight here. He clearly calculated all of this. He had all of this in mind, but a very nice move here from Hans. Bishop retreating back to the e4 square. And now we have knight takes, and Hans plays pawn takes f6. Not queen takes, which is by far the more natural move. Instead of that, he takes with a pawn, and then in a couple of moves, he comes up with an extremely creative idea. So bishop here attacks the rook. f5 kicks out the bishop. Now it's black to move. What does black do here? I mean, black is staring at a knight that he cannot take. None of black's pawns can move forward. They're all stuck. It would be great if we could land a queen there. Good luck. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're probably going to get stopped. And on top of that, pawn to f3 could trap your bishop. Which is why in this position, Hans Niemann channeled his inner Mikhail Tal. He spent 24 minutes, and he sent this pawn forward. Now, this move goes extremely underappreciated by the computer. It's an extremely good move. The idea of this move is that you would like to play pawn to h4, crack open the position, and then when this pawn is gone, the h-file is open, which means you can play king up and rook here. It's very, very subtle. It's a very nice same-side attacking chess. And if you're watching this wondering, can't the bishop just take the pawn for free? Absolutely. Absolutely it can. And guess what? That's all part of the plan. This bishop is like a slingshot. It's going back and forth, like a little pendulum. Now the bishop sees that rook is coming, so it retreats all the way back to d1 to potentially go around this way. But that's all the time Hans needs. Rook to h8. Now you have queen e6, queen h6 ideas, queen e6, f4, queen h3. By the way, you could sacrifice here sometimes, get the queen to the h-file, and then deliver a checkmate. White is not feeling particularly comfortable here. He plays h4. He tries to kick out some air for the king to have a little bit more breathing room. Hans finds a very nice idea here as well. Rook c6. A very, very subtle move, preparing the full swing over to that side of the board. And before you know it, there is going to be a bishop, a rook, a queen, and another rook all attacking the king. Can you add that up? What's 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 9? Very good. If you said 36, you don't know how to do math. We're going to move on. 10, 16, 25. Very good. Very good. 25 points of material. And who is protecting the king? Nobody. A couple of pawns. He opened a couple of windows in the castle and was like, I think we'll figure it out. I'm just going to get a little bit of fresh air. Now, knight takes e4, removing one of the attackers. Hans takes with the f-pawn. And now rook b1. Completely unafraid. Absolutely unafraid of the attack. You know, he's just like, I'm going to go over here. Now, at this point, you start looking at sacrifices. When you have multiple pieces pointed at your opponent's king, and you have backup, what I like to say is if you have 2 more attacking pieces than the opponent has defenders of the king, you start looking for sacrifices. Giving up a bishop for a pawn, or a bishop for 2 pawns, or a rook to open up lines to the king. In this position, folks, white's king has no guards. This bishop does not count. Just don't put a piece on a light square and you won't get taken. But this hardly counts. So, rook h4 and bishop takes g3 are both there, and Hans Niemann, it wouldn't be a video talking about brilliant moves if Hans Niemann didn't sacrifice the rook. My throat is sore, so I'm not screaming. Rook takes h4. Please disregard the gigantic X that the auto-generated game review gives. Rook takes h4 is a nasty move. He straight up cannonballs the rook onto the h4 pawn. And now after, it has to be taken, by the way, because otherwise I'm just going to checkmate you. You take on h4, queen takes h4. So now I have a queen coming in, a bishop coming in, and a rook coming in. But I will say there are only 3 pieces remaining. How is white going to get mated by 3 pieces? I don't, right? Now the king runs. King f1. King f1. Now, if I could get a rook to f6, that would be great. But what do I do now? You see, if I make a slow move like bishop c7, I think that gives the king enough time to get, potentially out of the way. Not to mention, I always have counterplay. Well, Hans Niemann was not done just with the rook sacrifice, which I would change to a blue and give this a brilliant. Hans Niemann then proceeded to sacrifice the bishop on g3. Shredding open the position further. It's not even a sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice. It's an attack. I'm threatening bishop f2. I'm also threatening queen h1 and queen f3 and queen f2. So I'm threatening check, here, check. I'm literally attacking the pawn. You cannot take it. Why can you not take it? Because then you open up all of the lines near the king. If you play pawn takes g3, I think it's just mate in 3, rook f6, or you start with queen h1. Doesn't really matter. No, I think it does matter. You have to bring the rook, but it's mate. It's mate. Pawn takes g3 is mate. So, bishop e1, rook f6. Look at how insanely powerful this attack is. Queen c2. Rook b6 incoming. I'm going to try to trade off your rook, and I have enough defense on this pawn that you're not going to break through. Or so you would think. Hans Niemann's attack continues. Queen h1 check. He hunts the king out to e2. And now queen g2, rook f2 check is mate. Bishop takes, queen f2 is literally checkmate. You only have this move. King here. Running away to c1, running away to c3, b3, a2. The king is getting some freaking cardio, by the way, just going on a full run across the board. Now, Hans breaks the castle down. Bishop takes f2. All of the castle walls have perished. Look at the position just 10 moves ago. I mean, everything was standing around. Everything was there. You fast forward the position from this point forward. Bishop f2, the whole thing has collapsed. The king is running across the center line. The bishops are on the back. What are they even doing there, by the way, right? Now, bishop e2 looks like you have blocked everything. You have sealed everything shut. Hans Niemann is not done sacrificing. He sacrifices the bishop again. Bishop takes e3. That king still cannot take the bishop, by the way, because queen back to g5 is literally mate. It is mate in 1. The king has no escape. So the king has to keep going. The best move is to run the king to d1. King c3 loses to rook c6 check. King d1. Hans now plays queen g1. He has 3 pawns for the bishop. So he has 5 pawns. He's maybe going to win this one. Maybe you have bishop f2 incoming. Now the best move for white is rook takes b7. He doesn't play that. Queen c8. All right? White now is trying to check the king so that you trade the queens and the game. That's why Hans plays this move, preventing that from happening. But now Sam Shankland, rook b7. Sam Shankland, not too shabby. Still going for counterplay. Still understanding that while he's attacking, he can, he can attack himself. Bishop h4, putting some pressure. And now white has this opportunity to trade the queens. Queen g4 check. He plays it. Takes. Bishop g4. Rook f1. Finally, Hans cashes in on his attack. Rook e1 is incoming. The best move here for white is bishop e6. King d2 is second best. Bishop e6 at least tries to put some pressure. He plays it. Rook e1 check. And now you need to choose. Do you play king d2 or king c2? Which move? King d2 makes no sense. Why? Well, because why would you allow the pawn to move forward with a check? And it's getting closer to queening. Nope, just kidding. That's exactly what you should do. Because king c2 loses. Tough to understand the difference. It's very, very subtle, but you need to stay close to the king. That's it, to the rook. You have to play king d2. And if e3, king d3. It's very, very subtle. Now, Hans Niemann can give a check and go here. And he wins the game. That's it. All he has to do is defend the f7 pawn. Why? Because this pawn is not as important as now you advance and your rook and bishop are at a perfect distance to promote. You're playing rook here and taking. You're playing e2 check, which is just going to win the game on the spot in a move because you have all sorts of discovered attacks, and this pawn is weak. You had to put the king on d3. Subtle difference, and sometimes these beautiful attacking games do end in devastating fashion, simply going into an endgame. And now this game is over because rook e6 and black preserves his final pawn. Can you believe it? One pawn is the difference. You launch this insane attack on your opponent, sacrifice the rook, sacrifice the bishop, pry the king out into the open, and the game ends because you simply keep one pawn on the board, and that wins you the game. Why does it win you the game? Because you're going to win the other pawns, and then you're going to promote your own pawn. This pawn's falling, that pawn's falling, this pawn's going to become a queen. Hans Niemann wins a crazy game in the US Championship. And as a bonus for being so great and clicking on this video, you're going to get another one. And by the way, then I will give you an update about all the rounds today, which are happening as I'm recording this, and they're quite crazy. Hans might actually win himself a second game. So, Fabiano Caruana versus Andy Woodward. We are Andy Woodward truthers here. Shout out Dallas, Texas. He is from there, and he's playing Fabiano Caruana, obviously monster, lifelong top 2, top 3 player in the world. This is Andy Woodward's first US championship, as you might imagine, considering he's like 6 years old. I think he's 15, but one of the youngest grandmasters in the world right now. And in this game, he came to fight. Fabiano Caruana played some nonsense sideline variation of the English opening. Queen b3 doesn't even begin to look like it makes sense, but it has a very simple idea. It's just stopping black from playing the move d5. It's a kind of a ridiculous move. And obviously there is no advantage whatsoever, but you know, you kind of take the opponent out of their comfort zone. And in this game, something very funny happened. From the opening, it was Andy Woodward who played in a way that Fabi didn't remember what to do. And then he just gave him a pawn. He played in a way where you give the guy a pawn. Fabi took, and Andy Woodward uncorked pure savagery on the board and played knight d4. I mean, let me just tell you something. The arrogance you have to have, and I mean that in a good way, the self-belief you have to have in yourself as a 15-year-old playing someone who's like double your age. I think Fabi's 31, ancient. He's got some gray hairs, you know, same. Like, he's playing a 2,800 FIDE rated player, and there is zero fear, zero respect. Knight d4 is incredible. He's jumping into c2, and against Fabi Spooked, who plays a double question mark move on the 9th move of the game. Andy Woodward's opening play, his creativity from this position got Fabi to forget his lines, because this is probably not the best move, and play pawn takes d4, bring his queen back, and he's literally mercilessly being hunted down by the teenager. Pawn takes c3, rook e8 check. Fabiano Caruana is losing in 13 moves in the US Championship to the teenager. His king can't castle anymore, right? Bishop e2 isn't coming at a moment's notice. The only thing that's protecting it is the knight. And meanwhile, the guy just has a rook hanging, like the entire opening. He's like, yeah, take it, of course. And you can take it. If I take this back with a queen, the queen ends up sniping across the entire board. Queen is extremely powerful. This bishop is worth more than the rook. Look, knight d7 was played here, trying to go knight e5. That wasn't the best move, but it was a move. Fabi went knight to f3, and his idea was quite straightforward. To meet knight e5 with knight takes e5, rook takes e5, and the only move here with white. Bishop e2 is a threat. I'm threatening to win your queen. But you literally can't stop it. That's how sickening this is. If you try to play defense, what ends up happening is black's position only gets better. Why does it get better? Well, all his pieces come to attack you, and because your king is on the back rank and you never castled, you're never going to get your rooks out. Since you're never going to get your rooks out, it's like you're playing without 2 rooks. What's worse, giving up the queen for some material or playing without 2 rooks and a king in the middle of the board? The answer is quite clear, right? So Fabi has to sacrifice his queen. Rook e2 leads to the same line as bishop e2. Takes. Yo, Fabi is scrambling. I mean, this is like when you get dropped, right, in a fight. In a boxing match, a fight, dropped. Scrambling, all right? Here comes Andy Woodward. Rook b8, hunting this down. Here's the thing, though, about these 2800 level players. When they are stunned and on the back foot, they are so resourceful. They are in another stratosphere of resourcefulness. Fabi now begins the consolidation process. Here's a lesson. When you're playing against the queen, when you have lost your queen, pay attention, okay? Just for a second, because this is something literally every single one of you has done once in the last week or the last month, which is hang your queen in a game. If you are just down a queen for nothing, sucks to suck, all right? Get better, stop hanging your queen. If you're down a queen for a rook or down a queen for a bishop, something like that, queen for some, hopefully more than that, here's a couple of things you need. You need a safe king, as safe as you can get. You need to use all of your resources. So you need them to coordinate and try to minimize the amount of trades. The more pieces you have, the more you can fight back against a queen. Having said that, chess is not so black and white, no pun intended. If one piece on the other side is particularly problematic and it's actually attacking your king, you have to make the right trades. So we're about to see bishop here, right? Look at this. Look at this utilization. Controlling key squares in the position, snuggling on the light squares. Queen f6. Now we need to protect our king. So what do we do here? We prepare an escape. We prepare a getaway to the comfort square of g2 or g1. Queen f5. Immediately trying to make us a little bit uncomfortable with our choices here. But we play h4. Why do we play h4? We have to make sure everything's protecting everything else. Everything in white's position is trying to be protected. Or some of the stuff is not protected, but difficult to get to. h6. Now, Fabi's like, all right, this is the only piece that's bothering me. It's hitting the area near my king. So I'm going to take with the king. And I know what you're thinking. Levy, what are you talking about? You said protect the king. Yes, but the king is protected. It's actually very well protected. This rook is a non-factor. So Fabi now goes into, bunker down mode. Don't lose mode. So we have queen back to c8. Andy is trying to zip around and attack some weaknesses. Fabi's like, that's not necessary. Now I'm going to run my king to safety. I'm going to give up a pawn. Pawn to b5. I'm giving up a pawn. Why does that pawn not matter? Because I centralize my position. I control my opponent's pawn movements, and my king is going right here, and I'm safe. Actually, even though black has an extra queen, I have excellent piece coordination, so you limit your opponent's mobility. We limit the rook mobility, we limit the pawn mobility, and this is chill. This is actually a pretty equal position. This position is what we call a fortress in chess. Everything is protecting everything else. Fabi knew this was his way to defend the position. He knew this was his way to defend the position right here. Actually, Fabiano Caruana, dare I say, here was ready to lose his queen for the benefit of the rest of the position and was like, okay, how do I not lose? And so he found a way with 3 minutes on the clock to get exactly to the right defensive setup. And this is magic to many. This is magic to me. I mean, I would have lost to Andy Woodward 37 different ways. But the 38th way, I would have maybe drawn h5, f5, and there's nothing. Pawn to a5 is played. He's trying to sneak the pawn by. We chop that pawn down. Only thing black still has is maybe something like this, but rook e6 is just too powerful. The game does get a little bit tactical here. So you see Fabi, you see Andy giving up some pawns and everything, looking to open the white king, but it's just not enough. And actually, if anybody's scared now, it's black, because white's king is totally safe. Look how safe white's king is, right? So black tries his best, and in fact actually makes it more complicated for himself than necessary. But ultimately, It is a sacrifice of the queen for defensive reasons. King f5, king g8 for Woodward, and this is just the draw. Side pawn, wrong color promotion square of the promoting, bishop and the pawn. And this is a draw. And the game ends by stalemate, as Fabiano Caruana stalemates despite the extra pawn on the board. And I wanted to share this game with you because it was a really, really nasty game. It was a really, really creative battle. From the opening, the computer was screaming. It's like +2, but Andy did what I think is completely reasonable. Fabi defended extremely well. And that's your dessert game, but the main course was obviously this incredible game from Hans Niemann, sacrificing pieces, rook, bishop, ripping open the position. And yeah, the US Championships, as I record this video, Hans has an extra knight in his game against Abhimanyu Mishra, but Abhimanyu has 3 extra pawns. A game already ended in a draw. A lot of games are close. I wonder Liang is putting pressure on Aparin, but we will see. It's about halfway done. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.